Welcome to SpringLaw's Spring Forward Legal Updates webinar series. This series is designed to provide a comprehensive legal overview of key issues related to employment law and human rights in Ontario. SpringLaw is a virtual employment law firm advising on workplace legal issues for employers, employees, freelancers, and executives from a wide range of industries. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar and find it useful and informative. To reach our team, please visit us at springlaw.ca. And now to our presenters.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lisa Stam, one of the lawyers at SpringLaw, and with me today is Evelyn Hellinga. It's exactly 10:30, so some people might be still joining us, so we'll let me get through some introductions first, and then hopefully everyone will be joining us as we go. If you're one of our clients, you already know that we are a employment and contracts law firm, virtual firm based out of Ontario. We welcome to those of you that are new to our webinars. Please feel free to join us every third Wednesday of the month at 10:30. We always have some sort of webinar on the go. Throughout this webinar, feel free to ask any questions you may have using the chat, and our team will shoot us the questions, and hopefully we can answer them as we go along. There's some slides in the handouts tab for the slide deck if you'd like to grab those. And then finally, if you have any questions about our firm or you want to learn more about us, please come to our website at springlaw.ca, where we have a bunch of resources, including information about our brand new Boss Law Bootcamp, which I'm very excited about, that we just rolled out a few weeks ago to help get your whole employment law infrastructure quickly and effortlessly rolled out or updated if you already have a bunch of the things. We have our award-winning weekly blog posts, our monthly newsletter, a subscription program for employers. So come on by and check out the different assets and resources, free resources on our website. So with me is one of our newer colleagues, Evelyn Hellinga. She joined us in the spring. So far, she's pretty awesome, and you'll see that very quickly that she knows her stuff. Before we really dig in, I, of course, want to start with an acknowledgement that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, and that this territory is now home to many diverse nations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Less pleasant is the legal disclaimer around, this is legal information, not legal advice. I think you all know that by now, and here, if you want to put yourself to sleep, you can read through these disclaimers in the handouts tab. Okay, today we're going to talk about quiet quitting. It is all over the place. For all the hipsters that are on the line, you already know what this is all about. For the rest of us that are north of certain numbers, we had to ask our teenagers what this all meant, and we have learned about it. Our clients are asking about it. So today we're going to talk about what is quiet quitting. We're going to help you identify who quiet quitters are, and then we're going to talk about how to manage them. Can you fire a quiet quitter if, in fact, it's tipping over into some performance issues? So let me hand it over to Evelyn, who's going to talk to us about what is quiet quitting.
Thanks, Lisa, and good morning, everyone. So, as Lisa said, we'll start with a quick recap of what quiet quitting is to make sure we're all caught up and on the same page. So, it's a trend that started on TikTok, actually, and has, really gained a lot of traction over the last few weeks. And essentially, it refers to employees who are starting to decide to, rather than, go above and beyond in their work and work extra hours and really, try to climb the corporate ladder, as they say. They're now focusing on just going to work for the hours that are required, doing the job that they're required to perform, and not going above and beyond without additional compensation. And so typically, or the discussion around this is that people are concerned and employers are concerned that employee disengagement is on the rise because people are starting to really focus on doing only the job that they are hired to do. So we can go on to the next slide. So this isn't really a new concept, as I'm sure you know. There's always been employees in the workforce who are, interested in setting clear boundaries and only doing the job that's required of them, not really interested in going above and beyond. But we're now sort of in this perfect storm of external circumstances that are making this concept, I think, a little more relatable for employees, and are making this a bigger challenge for employers. So we've got post-COVID lockdown recoveries that both employers and employees are still dealing with. We've got rising awareness of mental health and people's the way that people's mental health is impacted by their work. We have a lot more access to each other. Employers have more access to employees, and likewise, employees have more access to employers through, phone and technology. We've got an online digital economy, which are providing many more options to employees beyond their hourly wages. So our labor economy is starting to look a lot different than it used to. We've also recently had the Great Resignation, as it's been termed, and that's a little bit different than quiet quitting, where, as again, I'm sure you're familiar, earlier on in COVID, a lot of employees were starting to resign from their jobs, kind of waking up to feeling very burnt out and feeling like they needed, pardon me, a change. And now some of those resources that employees could rely on at the time to resign and still sustain themselves have petered out. And so now employees are turning to this idea of quiet quitting as a way of sort of addressing those same issues while still being able to pay their bills. And then we've got the impact of remote and hybrid workplaces. So, employers and employees alike are struggling, I think, with maintaining that connection and sort of personal investment and personal connection with their work and with their employees. So that's all created this kind of perfect storm that's increasing people's increasing employees' desire to engage with this idea of quiet quitting. So just to give you some idea of where this came from, it started out as a term that Zaid Khan used on TikTok on July 25th. So it really has been about 2 months now. And since that time, it's gotten millions of views, and it's really exploded as an idea on TikTok, Twitter, all around the social media universe. And he described it as, you're not quitting your job, you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond at work. So hustle culture mentality, that work has to be your life, is what you're quitting, essentially.
If you download the slides, there is a little play button here. When you get the slides, it'll be hyperlinked to this video online. But we're going to keep going today to in the interest of time. If you want to go look at the original TikTok, it's in there.
Thanks, Lisa. So again, just as an example, we've got this person who identified herself as a quiet quitter. I think she posted this on LinkedIn. And we see kind of, it just helps illustrate the idea of what quiet quitting looks like and why employees are pursuing it. So she identifies that she was working overtime, she was working hard to meet and exceed her targets, and she wasn't feeling recognized for that and wasn't being recognized for that extra work that she was putting in. And then she also found that there were parts of their work culture that made it difficult for her to do her job, like using fear as a motivation tactic. So I think generally those things point to her feeling undervalued and underappreciated as an employee, and looking for a way to address that. And so the way that she decided to address that was through this idea of quiet quitting, where she decided she was only going to work her designated hours. She wasn't going to be working overtime anymore. She was only going to do the duties that were set out in her role. And she was going to personally, work with her colleagues rather than sort of engage in what she felt was this toxic idea of colleagues being pitted against each other. So that's an example just to illustrate what your employees might be feeling right now and why they're turning to this idea of quiet quitting.
And very unapologetic about it, right? I think that's one of the different flavors of this movement, is that very unapologetic. The onus is back on the employer to have gotten it right in the first place, to not create these toxic workplaces, to be clear on what their expectations are, etc. And whereas I think not that long ago, and certainly a generation ago, employees would have worn a bit more of the blame on that, and more likely been told to suck it up. That's the way it goes. And there's something different happening right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks, Lisa. And it is a big challenge for employers too, right? Because a lot of jobs today do require some level of extra effort, and so later in the presentation webinar, Lisa will talk about some of the ways that we can address those issues as employers and move forward. So for now, though, let's talk about employees' rights and employers' rights, just to kind of set the stage for this conversation. So employees are entitled to overtime pay with some caveats and different sort of potential ways to do this, but most non-management employees are entitled to overtime pay under the Employment Standards Act when they work over 44 hours a week. Employees are also entitled to some clarity and specifics on what they're compensated for. So we have talked internally as a firm and been reading some interesting blog posts about how there's a difference between going to yet another event and being encouraged to go to another event, doing after hours work, as something that would be great for your development, and something that's actually an expectation and requirement of your job and your role. And so it can be very helpful and is important for employees to know the difference between those two things, right? And then the other thing is side gigs that don't interfere with their work. So employees can have other jobs as long as when they're at work for you, they are working for you during that time. Anything to add there, Lisa? No. Sorry, I heard a
no, I'm agreeing with you. It's true. and that side hustle, the side gig, like there's tons online about that, around side hustles. And this is what we're meaning earlier about that online economy. There's something new happening online where a person's efforts aren't being rewarded only hour by hour by hour. It's it's building out courses or different ways to earn. I mean, ask any of your preteens or young teenagers, like these YouTube stars that are earning millions of dollars a year by doing videos about gaming. It's a legit new economy that's emerging, and it's inspiring for young people to figure out ways to earn money without another minimum wage hour by hour by hour. And so side gigs are not going away anytime soon, and they're you can't ban them unless they are interfering with, are they competing? Are they soliciting employees? Are they, doing, are they not able to do the work that you have given to them? But otherwise, if yes, then you can't ban people from having some side gig, like dog walking, and you're in office, right? That they can absolutely go and do that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Okay, so now as an employer, what are your rights in your relationship with your employees? So like we just said, you are entitled to your employees' full attention during their designated working hours. So if they have if they have a TikTok that they're creating videos for while they're on your time, that's something that's not within their right to do, and is something that you can address with them. And again, we'll talk about that later on. You can also set requirements to meet specific benchmarks for their role. So in terms of performance and expectations there. You can also seek and reward enthusiasm, hard work, and extra effort, as long as that extra is clearly defined as extra and not a core requirement. So as long as your employees know that you're rewarding them for doing this extra work, and that extra work is not what you consider to be a core job requirement for them. Again, that speaks to the clarity around expectations and roles. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lisa to talk about identifying quiet quitters and how to manage them.
Okay, so other than following all of your employees on their TikTok and other social channels, how do you identify that you might have a few quiet quitters in your mix? So I think a lot of them will not necessarily be a George Costanza level of obvious. So anyone else who has watched a bit of Seinfeld in their day, you might remember the episodes where George was, maybe he invented quiet quitting. I think he was trying to do as little as possible at his job to see how far he could go before he would get fired, and he did very, very little. Same with Office Space, actually, my favorite workplace movie, where he gets hypnotized and does nothing, and the consultants think that's like brilliant management material. But that's another story. It's a great movie also to watch about versions of quiet quitting over the years. So how do you identify? Read the room, first of all, right? Read the room. If you're having yet another cocktail party, or yet another harbor cruise, or yet another thing where people can't hang out with their family, bonding, and part of it is a reaction to us all being in lockdowns for 2 years. We're trying to figure out, how do we make sure we keep addressing workplace culture and glue and all of that. But if you have a lot of people sort of taking their time accepting or declining or kind of complaining about it, read the room. Maybe all these extra social things in the workplace some of them are going to die out, right? I mean, because people now are seeing, well, maybe it's nice to stay at home and read a book, or hang out with my kids, or do other things in addition to all, my work. The other thing is really coordinate with all your frontline managers who are in the loop and they can hear that what's happening on the ground a little more. So for sure, engage in general atmosphere. I think these are really important questions. The other thing is, don't assume this is just the kids these days. It's not just the young people coming into the workforce at all. It could be a generational shift, but I think perhaps the generation coming in is stronger and more emboldened to set down some boundaries. But that's, everybody is probably also thinking, how do I create these boundaries post-pandemic? So it's not just millennials or the kids these days. So here's some suggestions to do a bit of a self-audit in your workplace and get a sense of what's going on and what might be some triggers of quiet quitters in the first place. So, check in. Is your management style, is it aligned with modern expectations? Hopefully most people have moved on from things like berating your employees for poor work, or trying to embarrass them in public, or calling them out, or rewarding employees who work super long hours more than maybe the efficient ones who just aren't, spinning their wheels all evening, or pitting employees against each other and trying to create a culture of internal competition, or really rewarding and expecting responses after hours. These are all old school management techniques that when we hear about it, we know there's going to be some red flags, because who wants to be managed that way? And there's lots of evidence out there that that's not effective management either. Whether you're a call center or like a sophisticated whatever firm, it's the modern style of management is not about breathing down people's neck. The idea of monitoring everybody with data, check out the webinar that I was on yesterday where we talked about employee monitoring and whether or not you should be doing any of that anyways because of the new Bill 88 that's coming down the pipe next month. Okay, have you transitioned your management style? If you are moving from an in-person, pre-COVID in-person world to a remote or hybrid approach, have you transitioned your management style to go with that? And what we mean by that is, if you're all in person, it's easy to visually see input. You can see if people are sitting at their desk or if they're downstairs in line at Starbucks forever. You can see that. But in remote, you now have to really think about measuring and managing output and having conversations about output. And this is definitely not a new concept. It's any modern management course will teach you about this being the way to do it. But we're forced to do it a lot more now and to think about it post-pandemic. Are you doing regular performance reviews and career development reviews to just listen to your employees and hear how they're doing? Is there extra attrition happening in corners of your business, which might be because there's a manager there that is needing a bit of extra support on all of this? And then overall, we see a lot of this. Are workloads increasing, but pay and headcount decreasing or staying static? It's a labor shortage in so many industries still. So that, keep an eye on. People might just be simply good old-fashioned burnt out and trying to draw some lines for their own mental health. So here are some pro tips for employers based on just what we're hearing from our own clients on this. Clarity, clarity, clarity. I said this yesterday, like 80% of our job is really helping sort through the broken telephone in the workplace. Do employees understand what the expectation is? Have you explained it to them? Have you updated their contract without or their job description, or has the workplace evolved? And yes, you've had maybe team conversations, but have you had that one-on-one with somebody to say, okay, you are now accountable for this thing, and that might mean sometimes you have to field this other thing after hours, and just have that conversation about the expectations. I think it's a good idea right now, post-pandemic, for most workplaces to take a look and just review whatever one-on-one meetings you might have in the books and any group meeting obligations. That's certainly when you go down that rabbit hole on TikTok of quiet quitting, you hear a lot about not another meeting, right? And this could have been an email, and if you're on Slack or Google Chats or Teams, whatever it might be, there are other ways to quickly discuss things instead of having yet another meeting, especially yet another video meeting. People are exhausted with that. So and that bumps people to have to do the substantive work after hours sometimes. So, is there a way to lean out the overall workplace meetings? Evelyn already talked about clarity on what is expected. What's an optional extracurricular fun thing that you can join if you feel like it, and what's like a core, like a business pitch that's going to happen on a Thursday at 7, and you want, some key developer there because they're going to know the substance. That's very different than, hey, we're all meeting up at the pub after hours. Who would like to join? Like that, what's optional, what's not. Acknowledge inflation. Inflation is happening. If you haven't raised salaries in a long time, it's something to think about whether or not that might be triggering. That's a business decision, obviously not a legal issue, but it's just one of these ingredients around tips to help identify and address some of these quiet quitters. What we often hear on the executive and employee side is that people want meaningful work. They don't need perky and fun all the time. They want meaningful engagement. So it's not, yet another bouncy castle type activity is not necessarily what people are looking for. So think through what is meaningful, more wellness type things, or simply more time off if that's helpful. Really open dialogues about proper lunch breaks, or whatever it might happen. That might be equally valuable to a fancy dinner somewhere where they're now taking out time from their family. And of course, the biggest tip: talk to your employees themselves and see what they're thinking. That's nothing can be more important than that. Okay, how do you manage them? So progressive discipline is always step number one. So employees are no longer expected or required to be grateful for their job, right? So everyone should just move on from that. And if you have an American parent of your company, I think that's still a little bit of a culture of, you know, especially because of the at-will world in many states still, you know, they should just be lucky to have a job. That is old school thinking that ain't going to fly anymore. So definitely move past that. But it is perfectly legit to require your employees to meet job expectations in order for them to stay employed, right? That is, people aren't allowed to rag the puck and malinger during work. That's it's a two-way street. They have their job, and you have to provide the job and pay it. So it's two jobs there. Once you've identified some sort of job benchmark, so, and again, these all have to be clearly laid out, job description or contract, wherever. Once you've a missed benchmark has been identified, there are two paths that you can take. One is if this is someone who you're sensing is genuinely trying and just has some skill development in the area, or maybe they got some stuff going on at home and they're late because of like they're taking care of someone who's ill or whatever it might be. That is not an intentional screwing up. It's someone who just needs a bit of additional support. Get them on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. It doesn't need to be anything hostile. It's really almost like a career development plan. And if you approach it that way, how do we help build out your skill set and support you right now to grow? And then you can identify these benchmarks and work with that. If you've got someone who's more deliberately being insubordinate, like you've asked them, look, I really want you to show up by 9 every day, and they keep showing up like strolling in at 9:15, 9:30, with their Starbucks and their chat, like, no, if you've asked them to be there for 9, and that's a job requirement, and especially if there's someone who needs to answer phones or there's some tangible reason why you want them there by 9, then soon enough you can start giving a verbal warning. If they still don't adhere to the requirement of the job, then you can give them a written warning, and then that all leads down the path to termination. It's all legit, right? The key thing is don't jump to conclusions right away and start firing people left and right because you think that they're quiet quitting. Quiet quitting itself is not any sort of grounds for termination. It's just a trend happening right now in workplace dynamics, that's all. The other big thing is, stay aware of labor dynamics in your industry, right? You maybe can't afford to push someone too hard because you're going to have a hard time replacing them. So that is a power dynamic that is alive and well right now and certainly fueling a lot of this. So for those that you want to or need to start to exit because either the PIP hasn't worked, you've given them a good runway, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be, and they're just really not the right fit, especially if you're a smaller organization and you can't afford to have people who aren't the right fit, then you can start going down the path of termination. You can fire anybody in Canada. You can always fire people as long as it's not based on a discrimination ground and you pay them enough, right? So we all know how hard it is to fire somebody for cause and how unlikely you'll be able to meet that ground as an employer, but you are allowed to fire people. That you just need to either give them a good amount of working notice, or if you're a severance employer, make sure part of that is cash, but otherwise you can fire people. So here's sort of 4 different paths. If they quit, whether it's quietly or not quietly, and they actually resign, they're not entitled to anything, right? So if the quiet quitting starts to lean on or like blur into them just not showing up for a few weeks, you can start to consider this job abandonment, and they've resigned and they don't get anything under any of our statutory or common law rules. If they approach you, we actually had a good discussion yesterday, if they come to you and say, I would like to quit, so I'd like to negotiate my exit package now, you don't have to give them anything. And we've actually been getting more calls like that where people want to negotiate their exit package. If it's just because they don't like working there anymore, that's called a resignation, and they don't get anything, right? So, but it might be because it's been a toxic workplace, or they feel they've been discriminated against, or there might be some other legal nuances that maybe you might want to engage in a conversation about a package, but we'll see. The third one is if they're just not very good and they're not the right fit, fire them, give them a decent package, have them sign a release, and we all move on. They probably find a way better job and everybody's happy. The third one is if it's extreme, or fourth one, if it's extreme misconduct, maybe it's cause, maybe, but that's where talk to a lawyer, right? Because it's probably not. And don't do all the steps, fire them for cause, and then call an employment lawyer. Call first and sort through that. So these are the different legal outcomes for quiet quitters. It depends. As a good lawyer, I have to say that. It depends on the facts. So your key takeaways, quiet quitting isn't new, but we have this really big awareness and this perfect storm and this boldness and leverage in the workplace right now around it all. So it's absolutely something that employers need to keep thinking about. That court of public opinion is super powerful right now. Social media really has, whether it's Glassdoor or, the business reputation is important. And if you have retention issues or you have a labor shortage, it's even more important right now. So it is something to pay attention to. But yes, at the end of the day, you can still fire employees if you need to. If they're terrible quiet quitters or just not really the right fit quiet quitters, whatever it might be, there are different paths to take down that. Okay, were there any questions? Just we have a team behind the scenes who's helping out. If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them down now. Evelyn, did you have anything else to add to that at all?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're up on 11:01. So if anyone on the we have a lot of people that joined this today, so I think this is a bigger session or a bigger issue. But send us your questions. That's fine. Or tag us on social. We've actually recently started a TikTok, so you can come join us on TikTok and come to our different social platforms and ask us questions there as well. So that's our webinar for today. Our next webinar will be on October 19. Again, every third Wednesday at 10:30. The topic to be determined. We'll be finalizing it. We'll put that out there shortly. But come on into our website and you can sign up still and then stay in the loop. Feel free to again visit us for some free resources that we have on our website. We're always posting stuff on social, different resources for you. And please don't forget to come check out our new Boss Law Bootcamp that has all the things that you need to just get yourself up to date and roll out an updated, or if you don't have it yet, a new employment law infrastructure. It comes with a couple of hours of legal services to help customize everything, and come check it out. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.